I made a vow to this path to be the most authentic version of myself that I can be and to live out my fullest potential. I made a vow to myself that I was not going to go to my deathbed with regrets, that I was not going to die not having dared greatly, not having stepped into my fullest expression as a man. And like, and so now it's like, okay, like, Raj, you made those vows. It's not just lip service. Like the universe is showing up to you. What are you going to do? Hello, everyone. Raj here, and welcome to this very special episode of Stay Grounded, May's monthly reflection episode. This one's a really special one for me because, one, it is the first monthly reflection episode that I am recording in person and filming it, as opposed to doing it through Zoom with Georgina, who is in the UK. Georgina is still a part of my team. She's still a big part of my life, but I've been really feeling the call to move the show to an in-person show. And so I just have my studio set up in Boulder now, and we got to record this one live with one of my mentees, Alex, who helps with production for the show and helps shoot the show. And and I'm really excited for this next chapter of Stay Grounded, which is more in-person content. So I hope you enjoy this episode. May was such a rich month of beautiful growth. I entered into a new relationship, and I talk a lot about that on the show, of like what it's like to step into new love, and what it's like to really like step into and all the fears and insecurities and noises that shows up when we are stepping into a love that is in alignment with who we are becoming. And I've just had a really potent month of opportunities to continue reclaiming who I am, what I'm becoming. And I talk a lot about that journey of how, these triggers that show up in our lives, a lot of times we want to run from them. But when we can build the courage and the awareness to sit in the trigger and to listen to the wisdom it presents, there's just so much beauty on the other side. And it truly does allow us to create a life that is in alignment with our deepest soul purpose. And so I'm excited for you to listen to this episode, to enjoy all the insights that come from it. And I just want to thank you again for being a part of this incredible journey that has been Stay Grounded. And I'm really excited for us to continue deepening into more and more levels of content and fun and insights and growth. So without further ado, here is May's monthly reflection episode with my dear buddy, Alex. Enjoy. Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to this very special and auspicious episode of Stay Grounded, which is my monthly reflection episode, but it's the first time I'm doing it in person and without Georgina. So, hi, Alex.
Hey,
welcome
Raj.
to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I was saying earlier, like this is like a very it's an edgy and vulnerable experience for me because my monthly reflection is such a ritual, a sacred ritual for me to like really digest and go deep and be vulnerable. And it almost felt like, and Georgina's still on the team, guys. She's, part of my life, everything. So there's something going on there. It's difficult to bring her from the UK to the US to record in person. But I've just been feeling the call to drop in deeper in person and really digest this in person. So I'm super excited for this, Alex. And obviously I love you and I trust you. And so I'm excited to kind of like go into this and unpack the month of May, which really felt like a rite of passage month in a big way. I turned 33. Like I moved to Boulder, and I'm stepping into new love. I'm stepping into new leadership. The universe is really calling me forth into bigger and bigger levels of Raj, and it was a big month. Lots of lessons and lots of directions we can go in.
Yeah, it seems like from what we've discussed, it's been a really high growth month for you. A lot of forced growth for you.
Well, okay. Forced growth is an interesting framing on that because at the end of the day, I'm choosing the growth.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no one forcing me to grow. It's just life is presenting circumstances and I'm choosing to lean in. And maybe we'll just start with, new love entering into my life. Natalie, I was not anticipating to start my bolder chapter with new love and new relationship. But when I met Natalie, I met her the last week I was in Costa Rica in April, and I could just feel something different about her, feel something new. And there was parts of me that wanted to run, parts of me that wanted to sabotage, parts of me that wanted to find fault, and I realized those parts of me were all keeping me safe, keeping me comfortable, keeping me in my state of like what I can predict and what I can control. But her presence was activating a lot of growth and a lot of newness. And so in those moments, like I have a choice. Like I could either lean in to the fear, to the insecurity, to the noises and the voices that are telling me to run or telling me to not do this right now, or hey, like this is not the time for love and intimacy. This is the time for focus. All those voices, I could listen or I could lean in. And to me, that choice to lean in has been my North Star. It's been the North Star since I started down my awakening path. And I believe that's what's allowed me to really create the life that I have now and experience the levels of depth and growth and fulfillment that I can now. But when I first met Natalie, there was that noise. And so even leaning into that, and when I left Costa Rica, we kept in connection, and it was just growing, and I could just feel it, what was happening. And, the first big thing that happened was I invited her from Costa Rica to come stay with me for a month in Boulder and like explore if what we had was real. And she being the firecracker, just the yes to life personality and soul that she is, she showed up. And then that her being here brought up so much, and her presence was really activating a lot. And I want to talk a little bit about just like stepping into new love. Like, it doesn't get talked about enough, I think. And we were talking about this at dinner last night. Like, like when we close out relationships, it takes time to heal those heartbreaks and those wounds. And, as we begin to open up our hearts to new human beings, like it's edgy. Like there's fear, there's insecurity, there's longing, there's missing our old partners. Like there's all these feelings that show up, and it's confusing and disorienting. It's like, oh my God, if I'm missing the other person, does that mean I'm supposed to be with them? Or like, oh my God, like this new person doesn't do the thing the way that the other person did it. Like, does that mean that I'm at the wrong? It's like all these noises and voices and things that are showing up. And, it's been a deep rooted practice of letting go and listening to like really like close out and honor what I shared in my last partnership, and like really step into a new relationship with a sense of gratitude and honor for everything that was shared and excitement for what I'm stepping into. And it's been a messy year. I would just say that, of me opening up my heart and intimacy and being hit with so much resistance and me running. But there was something different about this time. I think there was a readiness that I had around being ready. And we talked about this too, like, the first 4 months of the year, like I really like was focusing and being celibate. And I think there's something about that period of celibacy and space and like clearing my field that really allowed me to step into a more ready state. So that when Natalie did show up, I was like, oh wow, like, yeah, like this is edgy and uncomfortable, and it's bringing up a lot of my stuff. And like, I feel a depth of readiness to step into something new.
What does it look like to lean in when you feel that feeling of the trigger or the uncomfortness uncomfortableness. Is that a word?
That can be the word.
That's the word I'm going to
That's
use.
great. Yeah.
Uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does it look like to lean in?
Yeah. So let's just take an example, right? So like, one of the biggest fears and insecurities that showed up for me with Natalie was that she's a little bit older than me. She's 38, and she's really stepping into like devoted partnership. She's not like, hey, like I'm just here to like date and mess around. Like I'm not. And she's a woman. She's really like, hey, like I'm calling in my partner, the partner that I do life with, the partner that I create with, that I build with, that I like step into. And, like when I go back and look at my journals and my manifestations and all the things I wrote down of like what I'm calling in for love, like Natalie was hitting all the check boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And in those moments, there was this fear that showed up. It's like, am I ready? Am I ready for that? And it was like a big call forward. And, I look at these moments of like, okay, like there's two choices I can make. I can say, no, I'm not ready for that. And like, look at the energetics of that decision. Is it coming from love or fear? To me, that it didn't feel like it was coming from love to not lean in to that invitation that she is, this invitation to rise into my man, this invitation to rise into my fullest expression, this invitation to access my capacity as a provider, as a leader, and like really call me forward. And so like when I looked at that, I was like, wow, like okay, like this is an edge. And it's an edge that I want to lean into because it's who I envision myself becoming. And I think these triggering moments are these opportunities to step into who we are becoming. Every single one of them, right? Like you get triggered by somebody who says something to you. It's an opportunity to respond one way that you've always responded, which has kept you safe, which has created the same dynamic you have with this person. Or you have an opportunity to choose differently and step into the unknown and step into and let go of control and surrender into a greater mystery, a greater story, a greater unfolding of who you're here to be. And that to me is juicy. And that to me is what it feels like. The feeling is like this, like I'm stepping into something new. And in that there's fear and anxiety. And what I've gotten really good at is letting myself feel the feelings, letting myself feel the fear. In my morning prayer, one of the most potent practices I've had over the last several months since I got out of my Vipassana is my daily sadhana in the morning. I wake up at 6 and I step into my meditation and I just pray and I sit in prayer and I allow any emotion, any fears, any insecurities to show up, and I bring it to the capital H, her, to God, and I hold it, and then I let myself be vulnerable, and I crack, and in that vulnerability is where the medicine is, in letting go, and from that state of clarity, once I feel the feeling, how do I choose to love? And in that space, every single time, it was like, yes, I choose Natalie. I choose to show up. I choose to rise into this next version of me, into this next iteration of me, into this invitation that she is from the divine. The divine brought her in to step into more. And that to me is where I feel, and that's the point that we all get to play with. That's the point that we all get to examine together. And that's why we do this work in community, right? Like, I don't feel like it's work that we're meant to do in isolation, right? Like when I was coming up with triggers, like I called my coach. I brought these triggers into the work I do with Liberate in my communities. I brought this into my business partners, and my healing communities. And they were all like, Raj, like, this feels like an invitation, right? And so it's also that piece of like having allies and brothers and sisters that you can go to. Just be like, hey, is this a trigger I should be leaning into, or a trigger that I should run from? And that question is a beautiful question.
Yeah. Well, it's getting the reflection from the other people of, okay, is this valid? Is this, because it's real to us, right? Like I think all the triggers are obviously like they come up and they feel like the most real thing because they are. But when you hear somebody else validate that or say, yeah, I think you should lean in here, it's a massive, at least for me, it's a game changer in terms of just being able to be present with it.
Well, having people in your life who know who you're becoming is essential,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you keep hanging out with people that are like happy with where you are, anytime something shows up in your life that is here to invite growth in you, those people are going to be like, no, don't do it. Like, have you thought, like, there's going to be a critical voice that's keeping you stuck. So it's so important to surround yourself with people that really, really, really can see who you're becoming. They can feel the depth of what you're stepping into. And having allies and mentors and human beings like that in your life who see who you're becoming and can be able to help you discern between, oh, this is a trigger and an edge that is distracting you versus something that is helping you grow, is so important. And like I still remember, like, you know, one of my dearest friends and mentors, Mike Clark. I've been, you know, and that's, he's been really helping me with so many departments of this. Like with Natalie, like he was really able to see like, hey, like she's a big energy showing up in your life right now. And I remember him saying that to me, and I was like, I know, I know. And it's like, can I handle, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But like that was a good edge. He's like, bro, this is a big energy showing up and you're calling it in for a reason. And the same thing with liberate. It's like what liberate is calling forth from me. And that was a big theme of this month. If I really had to sum it down, it's like, who am I becoming? And that has been the question that the universe is continuing to give me. It's like, I'm going to continue giving you gifts and blessings because you're doing your work. You're clearing your field. You're stepping up. You're showing up. And I'm going to keep giving you opportunities to continue rising and continue doubling down on who you're becoming. And that's a choice that we all get to make. We get to make that choice in every moment with everything that forces us to grow. And that to me is the so having those mentors in your life is so important.
Yeah.
And for me, like I really feel like I'm like the archetype that I keep coming back to, that I'm really cultivating, is the divine father. Like there's like, you know, the king, warrior, magician, lover. There's the ranges of the archetypes, right? There's the king, there's the warrior, there's the magician and the lover. And I feel like I've really been focusing the last few years on really actually healing my relationship with like the lover, like the feminine aspects of of me and my masculinity, and like really healing that in many ways. I've always, and just to give you everyone a frame, like, so like the king is like the divine father. It's the one that holds the structure, the leader. It's like the energy and the presence of that, like stability. And you can just feel safe in his presence. The warrior is the one that fights for what's right. The one that's like charging through in the world with mission and purpose and knows exactly where to go. Then the magician is like the one that is focused on like mastery, mastering craft, mastering their skill sets, mastering who they are. And then the fourth is the lover, which is the poet, the artist, the romantic, the one that the love making. It's like there's the aspects of the loving, and so all four of them together create, you know, the divine masculine. Any of those missing are missing. And so like for me, you know, it's been a useful frame. I've been using that frame for the last several years, since 2020, to really like kind of guide my own journey. And I really feel like in this chapter, I'm reclaiming my warrior, and I'm reclaiming my king and my divine father. And that's really been like where I've been cultivating a lot of energy and space. And so like it's it's only fitting that, depending on where you are in your life and where you are in your development, you're going to attract opportunities and triggers and reasons to grow.
Yeah. Does that feel, so you say you're reclaiming it. Does it feel familiar or unfamiliar when you step into that?
Well, it's like the king is an interesting archetype because I've been working on that one for years,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like I've been stepping into greater and greater levels of servant leadership, greater and greater levels of divine providership, greater and greater. And so like it's like and life is giving me greater and greater opportunities, right? Like whether it's in the form of a relationship and Natalie, or if it's in the form of Liberate and the needs that Liberate has in order to continue growing, and like the responsibilities I must carry in order for that entity to thrive and for us to continue making the impact we're making in the world. Like so it's like as I grow, there's opportunities for me to step into greater levels of those archetypes, commit even deeper to my mission, be an even bolder, audacious visionary of how I show up in the world, or how I teach, or how I, and a big part of me actually bringing the monthly reflection episodes in person is so that I can step into even more like a greater level of leadership in my content and the ways that I teach and the way that I present.
Mm-hmm.
It's like these are all moments, you know what I'm saying? Like these micro moments of me claiming. And so it's not that it's unfamiliar, it's more of a doubling down on who I'm becoming. It's like it's a leap of not just faith, but full double down trust in who I am and who I'm becoming, and these opportunities to continue recommitting your vows. So it's like I like to think of it as vows. I made a vow to this path to be the most authentic version of myself that I can be, and to live out my fullest potential. I made a vow to myself that I was not going to go to my deathbed with regrets, that I was not going to die and not having dared greatly, not having stepped into my fullest expression as a man. And and so now it's like, okay, like, Raj, you made those vows. It's not just lip service.
Mm-hmm.
Like the universe is showing up to you. What are you going to do?
Yeah. It gets to go from words to actions. I like the vows because it emphasizes an intention every day. And I think it's easy sometimes to be like, okay, this is who I want to be, and I'm going to plan this out. And then somehow I'm going to get there. But it's really a daily showing up. It's a daily dependence. It's a daily trust that you get to step into in these tiny little micro moments, just like you were saying with the content, with the business, with the love, the relationships. Like every single moment, we get those tiny little pings of like, go left or go right. And when you know you're supposed to go right, step into greater trust, commitment, responsibility, and you go left, just delays that a little bit, or it takes you away from your authenticity a little bit. And then I don't know if you've experienced this, but if you make those decisions too many times, you're so far away from your authentic self, if you want to call it that, that it's hard to see that way again. And so it takes that like every day showing up, meditating, praying, being there.
Well, it's connecting to truth, right? Like, and this is the piece that I've experienced in my life. Like I used to live a life that was very disconnected from truth. And as a result, I was sick. As a result, I had health issues. As a result, I was drinking more than I'd ever been drinking. As a result, my relationships weren't thriving and connected and on fire. Like and so like, for me over the years, all the decisions I've made is to align more greatly with truth. And that has taken a tremendous level of courage, right? To like leave the things that were not in alignment, to trust in a greater unfolding, to trust in the divine plan for my life, and that the divine plan for my life is much more, is going to bring so much more joy and fulfillment than anything I can fabricate in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I've made those commitments to the divine plan, the more I've made my commitments to following the path of her, the capital H her, the more I've been able to access him within me, the more I've been able to access the divinity and the archetype of full masculine expression within me, the most authentic version of that. Isn't what society deems as masculinity, more like what does being a man mean to me? And how does he show up in the world? And that has come from the micro choices. It's not in the big decisions. Yes, there's big moments in our lives that require us to make a double down choice, but it's in the micro commitments that we make and keeping and staying in integrity. Ultimately, integrity is like the North Star, right? Like, can we be in right relationship with our compass and what's important to us and our values? And if we are not, can we course correct? Right? And that's where, like, I think, to me, the ultimate, like, the reason why all this work matters is to come back to a state of integrity with our souls, with ourselves, and to actually prioritize that connection. Because when we live from that space, like we were talking about this over coffee this morning, like, I really feel like, because over the last several years, I've done so much work to clear anything that wasn't truth, anything that was a learned condition from religion or from culture or a belief system that I inherited from family. Like, the more I've unraveled from the matrix, from anything that is not truly in authentic alignment and integrity with who I am at my core, the more now I can trust what I put out into the world. I can trust my creations. I can trust that everything that I'm doing now, everything that's showing up now, I can trust saying yes to. I can trust it because I've done so much of the work to clear. And so this devotion to the work, this devotion to coming back into alignment with truth, has far greater implications on the good of society than I think we're giving it credit. Like, this is more than, because an aligned human being that is operating in integrity with the voice of God or her or the universe is going to leave a ripple of impact on the world that we can't calculate yet. And I think that's what's so exciting for me about the times we're in. Like, I feel the awakening. I feel it. And I feel the way Liberate is coming to life. It is birthing itself through the consciousness of every single human being who wakes up to the same realization that we cannot do things the way we've been doing up until this point. We must wake up to more. We must access the fullness of ourselves and unshackle ourselves, liberate ourselves from the conditioning of an afraid mind. And that really is, I think, the journey of being a spiritual being in a human body, which is to liberate ourselves from the mind and unleash our infinite selves, our creator selves, and really step into more of our divine purpose.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that we talked about this last night too, but that kind of starts with awareness. And I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but, the question that comes up for me when we talk about this kind of stuff and living from your truth is, okay, well, if you're far away from that truth, what do those micro moments look like? What is your barometer for, do I go right or left? And it seems to be just the awareness and the presence within yourself that at least is the spark for that, I think, to come up. But it seems like this month for you has been a lot about noticing that, sitting in that awareness, and then taking that step of faith, that step of trust into, okay, this is who I am becoming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the who I am, and I'll talk to you asked a few things in there, but you mentioned a few things in there around, like, the micro moments, right? Like, I feel like most people are wanting, like, certainty about what the right choice is, certainty about, like, I need to know that this is going to work. I need to know that you are it. I need to know. That need to know is coming from a mind and a psyche that has not come into right relationship with uncertainty, that is not living in right relationship with the truth of life, which is ultimately that we have zero control.
And like you said earlier, that the divine plan is so much greater and more joyful.
And in that, it requires faith.
Right.
Right? Like and like this journey of going from fear to faith to trust in many ways, right? Like that's like the arc of it. Natalie and I are actually talking about that journey of fear to faith to trust. And like that, like when you're first starting out, like those micro moments look like courage, like you're trusting in something you can't see, right? And the trusting in something you can't see is actually building your relationship to some higher intelligence. And it's like this, you're carving a new path. And that does take courage. And it does take community to cheer you on and support you as you're stepping into that next phase. But as you go through that and you build up faith, then I believe the next great dropping in is trust. And trust in the divine plan, trust in the moment. That you brought presence up. I'm so glad you brought up presence. Because in the beginning, when you're going from fear to faith, it's difficult to trust what you're feeling in the moment. Because there's so much trauma and fear and beliefs. Like there's a lot of noise in the moment that stops us from actually hearing the truth. Because the truth sometimes in the beginning is very subtle. Right? Like sometimes it can be a big hammer. Like you might just get a divine knowing and you're just like, whoa, okay, this is the path. But I've experienced it in the beginning that it's not so easy. There's too much noise. And so in those moments, I would offer anyone listening who's like afraid of making a decision, if you're 60% sure, or actually you don't have to be 60%. If you're 51% sure, run in that direction. If you're a little bit more sure than you're not, run in that direction. Because ultimately, that's how you actually shape and allow what's not the truth to fall away. 51%. 51%. That is all you really need. And when you go down that path and you get more data and the vision becomes clearer, then you might be more 60%, that it's this way or that way. And you start to weave your life until you've cleared all the debris that comes from having a machete in your hand and just chopping through. And now you've come to a place where you're so clear. And then it's much more subtle. You're actually already on the path. You're on the divine path. And now, like, you can trust the invitations. You can trust, but you've developed that relationship to some orchestrating intelligence. And I think that is like, most people, I really feel like the actual ultimate way to stay grounded, the ultimate tool for staying grounded is having a healthy relationship with a higher power. Like we don't want to talk about it, but like ultimately, like trusting that something is unfolding greater beyond you allows you to make sense of crisis moments, allows you to make sense of those difficult experiences, the heartbreaks, the health challenges. It may not solve it in the moment, but it gives you the strength to continue choosing down a path that might be different than the path that brought you to the crisis. And that's ultimately like the point and the shift, right? Like it's like these crisis moments force us to build that relationship, but it's making us greater. It's giving us more of us. And I've just continued to find in my life that crisis is here to help us unlock and unleash the greatest versions of ourselves and the versions of ourselves that are truly here to serve beyond the ego in a way that's nourishing for all parties involved.
Yeah. So where do we go from here?
What do you mean?
So we're in this place, you're in this place
Yeah.
in this monthly reflection
Hmm.
where you're being called into this greater sense of trust, this greater sense of responsibility, I would say, and commitment. And if you had to look at right now, the next few months, where would you say that you're gonna end up?
Mm. Also, I can't say I'll know where I'm going to end up because, my life has changed pretty dramatically and in pretty short order in many different periods of my life.
Hmm.
I can choose, I can double down and recommit to who I'm becoming. Which is ultimately, it's again, like, this is not like anything new. I've actually talked about this on the podcast. Like, I've said this over and over again. Like, this is like a recommitting to who I'm becoming. And it feels like every month is just more opportunities for me to recommit to the vision I have for my life and not say that, oh, I have to wait 10 years to experience that, or that the life I want is conditional upon me achieving these certain milestones. It's like, no, like, the life I want is here. It's in my grasp. The universe is presenting opportunities for me to have the life I want right now in every moment. So it's more about a continuing down my path. I actually
Yeah.
just feel like where I'm at in my journey right now is like there's no new information. There's no new books. There's no new ideas. Everything is already here. There's no new information. It's just remembering where I'm headed, remembering why I started down this path, remembering who I've committed to become, remembering why I'm choosing to do the work I'm doing in the world, remembering my why and staying connected to that why and really anchoring in that why is a big part of what I believe I am stepping into, and speaking from my why. Like, that to me is so important. Like, a big part of last month for me was finding my voice and remembering my voice and remembering the power of my come from. Like, when I'm speaking from fear or worry or anxiety, it's like over in one bucket of flavor. But when I'm speaking from my depths, from my truth, from my authenticity, from love, it's a different flavor. I really feel like a big part of my journey right now is continuing to anchor in, speaking from the latter, speaking from love, speaking from the depth of my truth, really communicating from there and listening and being still. And being moving is a big thing, man. The last month, May, was just a lot of chaos. Like, being here and then Natalie being here and then moving in, and it was like not being grounded in my practices and my rituals. And so, I feel really excited to kind of double down. Like, this chapter of Boulder for me is about really like doubling down on my leadership and making decisions like we made to record this episode in person, making decisions like we're making to move the podcast to an in-person show, which is a big move.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've done a few in-person episodes over the years, and they always perform better. Or when I say perform, it's like you guys just reach out and you're like, you love them more. There's something about the energy of an in-person conversation that is more palpable and is more felt. And so the doubling down of that, the leaning into love and opening my heart and allowing my fears to be witnessed and seen, and allowing all the parts of me that want to run from love to show up, and for me to meet those parts with love and intimacy. Like, it's like just, or in liberate, it's like stepping into greater levels of asks, like being bold as a visionary and going into fundraising rooms or into collaboration rooms, or just being bold, just being like, this is where we're headed. This is how we want to play together, and just playing and being and speaking. Like that is like the flavor of all that is what I am continuing to step into. And who knows? Who knows what shows up? Who knows what the universe will bring in? Who knows what who knows what flavor of ice cream she wants to serve next? But what I do know to be true is that, and this is true, I believe, for all of us, life will not throw you into the wolf pen unless she believes you have a wolf in you. And so if you feel like there's something showing up in your life that's different, that's amazing, like lean in and allow that to be a thing that rises you into the next version of you. Because who knows what the next version of you is going to call in and create. But ultimately, it's letting go of the need to know that. I don't need to know where I'm going to be in 3 months. I don't need to, because the biggest mystery is unfolding in front of me in every moment. I can feel like the frequency of generosity, which is, I think, what that servant leadership kind of frequency is. Like, I have so much overflowing in me that I want to give. I have so much I am experiencing within myself that I have enough to pour into my parents, into my relationships, my team, my customers, my audience. I have so much. And that feels so nourishing to be connecting to like that level of infinite source potential within myself. So yeah, I'm super grateful for you, brother, and for everyone listening. Thank you so much for, again, being a part of this unfolding for me. I keep every single episode of Stay Grounded live on the internet because I want you guys to know what's possible when we lean into the inner work. There's who I was when I started this show 6 years ago to like who I am now. Is it 6 years ago? Almost 7, actually. Almost 7 years ago to where I am now. And what we're stepping into now, like of creating these in-person dynamic conversations and bringing them forth in a big way, is really, it's really special. And so I'm just wanting to thank everybody for being a part of this journey. And thanks again, Alex, for facilitating a really beautiful reflection of an epic month in May, stepping into 33.
Yeah.
It's big.
Yeah. It's amazing. I'm honored to be here. We went for a cold plunge this morning in the stream.
That's coming back to like, how do I stay grounded in May? And like, what was like my biggest grounding practice? Like moving from a different country, like coming back from Costa Rica was difficult for me. Like coming from Costa Rica to here, back being in the States, being in like the energy of the States, which is just a very different frequency. Like it's a much more hustle, consumerism, like buying stuff on Amazon that I may or may not need, like working a lot more in ways that aren't, and like pulling me away, and then moving in. And so it was just a really hectic month, but I feel like the one thing that just kept me grounded was my meditation practice and like jumping in the creek. Like there's something about my meditation and coming back to stillness and really connecting to like that spaciousness between the notes, the spaciousness between the words, spaciousness between the things I must do. It really kept me anchored and grounded. And then being able to jump into the creek and feel her, Gaia, Mother Nature, the running water, and to pray before I jumped into the creek and to like feel the alchemy that's possible with water. It's so potent and juicy. And so yeah, those rituals really keep me grounded. Ritual, I think, is one of the most important elements of becoming grounded. Yes, there's a lot of things we can do to unlayer ourselves and just regulate the nervous systems and bring the nervous system into a state of groundedness. But ultimately, ritual is a byproduct. And it's like a reciprocal experience. When you have ritual, you are more regulated. And when you are more regulated, you crave more ritual, because it's like this symbiotic nature of how we human. I think being a human is a big part of having ritual and intention, being able to approach life with more devotion and meaning. And that dance is something that very much kept me grounded this month. And
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, I appreciate you welcoming me into your space. I mean, just to see the way that you do life, the energy that's in this space, all the biohacking things and the things to keep you healthy. And it's inspiring because it it calls out more of that simple living, peace, presence, and ritual, you know?
well, just to speak to that, like one of the things that's been very apparent for me over the last several years is like the importance of having a body that's clean. There's only a certain depth of the inner work you can get to if your body is in dysregulation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not putting clean food in it, if you're not drinking clean water, if you're not paying attention to, your emotional state, your mental state. Actually, in fact, like a lot of the physical, if the vessel isn't clear, you can't get to the depths of healing that are necessary in order to really step into authenticity and purpose. And so I've become very much attuned to the importance of taking care of my body.
Yeah.
And to keeping it in prime shape as I age, and really nurturing it and building muscle, and like really like keeping myself like thriving and strong and full of life force.
Mm-hmm.
And how much that has benefited this whole journey of becoming grounded.
Yeah. It's like it's the tuning fork, and I think like I love Jesus. I'm a big fan of Jesus. And one of the things that
I love me some Jesus.
I love me some Jesus. But one of the things that they talk about so much in the Bible is fasting. And like it always perplexed me. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, no, but I've never done that in my life. Nobody I know does that. But I think it speaks to that spiritual tuning fork of like when you clear the system, you're able to hear that voice way, way more, way louder. The subtleness of the voice becomes so much louder than it's almost like the junk food, the junk TV content that doesn't mean anything, the news. It dampens that tuning fork. It
Totally.
really dampens it. And so
Well, that's for me, I've been on like a 5-year journey, I think, of clearing myself from alcohol.
Mm.
And that one was really interesting for me because when I started drinking less, I started feeling more anxiety. And it forced me to do deeper work.
Yeah.
Right? It forced me into finding new tools to release energy from my body, to get more in my body, to feel my traumas, to get loose. And that was so eye-opening for me to see the more I cleared my body, the less I actually craved alcohol, the less I craved junk food, the less I craved putting things in my body that were going to create any level of like out ofness or pulling me out of a state of harmony, that were messing with my sleep.
Yeah.
Like it's like the more I cleared, the more I desired to stay clear.
Yeah.
And there's something about that. Like once you feel clear and feel clarity, you start to put a value on that is well beyond the momentary hits of pleasure, dopamine, that pull you away from deep rooted restedness.
Mm.
And that was a big piece of what I learned in my Vipassana, like the restedness you get from just being, that is worth protecting.
Yeah. And I think most people don't do it because that space in between, that weird, like I gave up the alcohol, but I feel more anxiety. That is a really hard place to sit in and be present in. But I went through a similar period last year where I tried to cut out every distraction in my life, everything, and realizing that, oh my gosh, everything in my life is set up in a way to dampen that tuning fork so that I don't feel as deeply. And when you cut all that out, it's a journey, but the other side of that is like true freedom, like real freedom.
Bingo.
And suddenly you don't need all the things. And so you look at our society and it's set up. Everything is set up as a dampening mechanism, like everything.
Totally.
The porn, the TV, the food, the how we live our lives, the sleep or lack of sleep, the lack of real genuine connection with people. And when you just step out of that, there's like I like to say to myself, like, it takes 30 minutes to 3 hours to get into that space for me. But sometimes that is a really uncomfortable 30 minutes to 3 hours to sit through.
Totally, brother.
But you always pop out the other side. Like the other side is always there. It might take a week or a month.
Well, and this is, gonna have to throw a massive plug to Liberate right now. Like, this is why Liberate exists, for those in between moments. When you make the brave decisions to make changes in your life, how do you actually learn to shift the way you relate to these emotions? You have to learn new skills. You have to learn to access greater levels of your depths and your awareness. You need to have community to support you as you learn to do this deeper inner work. But on the other side of the deeper work is liberation, is freedom, is having a nervous system that doesn't actually need to escape life, because you're just so grounded and solid in who you are. And how you express in the world from that vantage point is a treat, not just for yourself, but for everyone in your life. And that's ultimately the gift. So if you're listening to this and if you feel like you need the support, head to liberate.health. Check out our programs. I'd love for you to learn more about it. And yes, to everything you're saying. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, but I just think it's cool that you set up a space where you can, it just encourages that, it inspires sitting in that space.
I've created a lifestyle of awareness, which we'll talk about on another episode. But like, I really feel like getting out of this habit of like, oh, I need to get to a certain end zone, and just shifting to this is how I want to live my life has been a big piece. So it's like, I don't need to get healthy. I just want to live healthy. I don't need to get to inner peace. I just need to feel peaceful. It's like, there's a difference where instead of looking into the future of where I want to go versus just creating the environment that allows me to get there.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. I love it.
Well, I love you, brother. Thank you so much again for guiding a beautiful conversation. Excited for more. And everybody, that's a wrap for this week's episode of Stay Grounded. I'm your host, Raj, and this is your old friend, Alex, and somewhat new friend, Alex. And from us, stay grounded. Chat soon.